The new now is here. You need an out-of-the-box user-friendly platform that will help you transition smoothly to the new normal. You need vSmart School. vSmart School is a one-stop teaching and learning online platform perfect for hybrid learning. This two-in-one system caters to your distance learning and classroom management needs. vSmart School supports self-paced, teacher-paced, asynchronous and synchronous formal education online. In vSmart School, students will attend daily online classes and access Vibal's DepEd-aligned digital curriculum from preschool to senior high school. Need content for college? We have them too! With the guidance of parents and teachers, students will follow DepEd's recommended day-to-day lesson calendar for an entire school year. Teachers using vSmart School can also create lessons, schedule classes, and monitor their students' progress. Most importantly, teachers can also live stream or securely conduct online classes through the platform's webinar feature. Looking for a perfect classroom management partner? vSmart School has got you covered as it boasts of an out-of-the-box learning management platform. It provides a library of gamified and interactive materials, a lesson plan repository mapped to the curriculum, assessment tools, and ebooks that feature augmented reality technology. This LMS component of vSmart School is integrated with a learning record system. This means that through the system, teachers and students can track their teaching and learning journey. Not just that, teachers can also monitor students' grades through an electronic grading sheet called Gradebook. And if you need to deploy tests online, you can do so with Test Guru, where you can enjoy thousands of free test questions ready for deployment through the Vibal Test Bank. See? All your distance learning needs are here in vSmart School. Packed with curriculum-aligned content, learners' progress reporting, and ebooks that are AR ready, vSmart School goes beyond the traditional classroom experience. The good news is, you can also enjoy the vSmart School experience without the internet connection through its mobile app. Downloadable from Google Play Store and Apple App Store. So what are you waiting for? Start your virtual classroom with vSmart School.
Good day, Kabibal, and welcome to our Facebook Live Learning session. For the discussion this morning, our topic will be getting ready for school opening, how to establish a day-to-day schedule for you and your child. Before we begin, take note of the following reminders. Make sure you are registered to the webinar to have your e-certificate of participation. You may visit certificate.vivalgroup.com to generate your proof of attendance. You may place your question on the comment box allotted during the session, and they will be addressed by our speaker later on. Share the video using hashtag LearnAsOnePH as our official hashtag for our Vibal webinars. Experience learning, Kabibal. And now to proceed with our webinar this morning, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our distinguished speaker for today. Miss Kathreene Joyce Dadero is 27 years old, an English and Korean language teacher who has been teaching in Makati High School for 5 years now. She graduated from Philippine Normal University, Manila, with a degree of Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in English. She has recently put up her YouTube channel and Facebook page called The KJ Teacher that aims to be a voice of the teachers and let people know a teacher's heart. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Miss Kathreene Joyce Dadero.
Good morning po to everyone, especially to our students, parents, and teachers who are joining us for another episode of the Facebook Live sessions brought to us by Vibal Group. I'm really happy that you could join us today, and I'm even more happy, glad really for the opportunity given to me by Vibal to share and contribute to everyone's preparation for the new normal in education. So I asked the help of our tech team this morning to share my slides for me due to for poor internet. To especially thank Miss Jillian Enano. She discovered me through my Facebook page and reached me there. So that for the school opening, specifically po, talking to parents and guardians on how they can help create an effective for them in this new normal in education. But before I proceed, let us first go over a few disclaimer that I have here is that I'm not a parent or an expert in parenting. Okay? So, single pa po ako, wala pa po akong anak, kaya hindi ko po masasabing expert ako sa parenting. However, as you can see on my second point here on this slide, is that I'm going to share with you tips that I took from a teacher's perspective, especially working closely with students and parents. So aware naman po tayo sa kanilang mga concerns and circumstances. And also as someone who have friends who are parents and even teacher parents. So I observed how they conduct themselves in preparation for the new normal education. And finally, ang last disclaimer po natin is that while I was preparing for this talk, I tried my best to be completely aware of the socioeconomic differences. So aware po tayo that each household has a different circumstance. So what I did in preparation for this is that I stuck to the basic tips so that it can be as applicable to as many people and households as possible. So with these disclaimers in mind, let us proceed to our goals. So we have one major goal, and that is to answer the questions that you see on your screens right now. So the first question that we need to answer is, what is the current situation in the Philippines in terms of education? And then the second question is, relative to this situation, how did the roles of the stakeholders, specifically the students, the parents and their guardians, and the teachers change? And finally, based on this change, how can parents and guardians help create a schedule at home so that the learning experiences of their children will still be, maximum? Okay. So without further ado, let us proceed to our question number 1, which is, what is the current situation in the Philippines in terms of education? So, para po sa akin, and I'm sure lahat po kayo makaka-relate, ang buhay po natin ngayon parang nahati siya sa dalawang major na eras. Ito po, invento ko lang po ito, hindi po ito gawa ng mga eksperto, pero ang next slide po natin, dalawang eras yan. Meron po tayong BC at DC. Ang BC po, okay, stands for before COVID-19. So mostly mga 2019 and hanggang early 2020, yan po yung buhay natin before COVID. And then we have now the situation or the era we are in right now is the DC or during COVID. And the change between the BC and the DC was so drastic at naapektuhan po yung lahat ng aspeto ng buhay natin. So naturally, yung mga changes po na yan affected, of course, the educational sector. And dahil po dyan, we had to make some adjustments. So some of these adjustments are uncomfortable and some of them are even painful. Pero these adjustments had to be done. So what is the major change that happened in the educational setup? Our next slide will show you that the educational setting had to change from being in the school to being in the homes of the students. And the major consideration here is the safety of the stakeholders, especially the students. So transporting or migrating the learning experiences from the school to the homes, it's a difficult adjustment, I'm sure, because a lot of people are going to be affected by this specific change. So the educational sector, especially our Department of Education, tried their best to develop learning modalities to cater to as many students as possible, to cater to the different situations or circumstances in the homes. So let's go to our home. On the next slide, you see that migrating the classroom from the school setting to the home setting gives us this particular toolkit na kailangan po nating magkaroon kung gusto nating maging successful ang ating home education. But of course, not everyone has the capacity to adapt the online distance learning, which will require mobile devices and internet connection in the households. So if hindi po natin kaya yan, meron naman pong modular distance learning wherein the learning materials will be either delivered to the homes of the students or parents will get them from the school for their students. And then, kung meron naman po tayong konting internet connection paminsan-minsan on and off, meron din naman pong tinatawag na blended learning kung saan may combination of online and modular distance learning. Pero meron din po tayong TV and radio broadcast. So I'm sure na kahit po marami na tong mga learning modalities na to, meron pa rin po tayong question. And the major question that we have there is, how can we ensure the quality of education that our children will receive in these different learning modalities? So while now the public schools are very fortunate that we still have another month of preparation, no? So to improve the learning materials and the systems that are put in place, but after the higher ups develop this system, it all boils down to us here in the grassroots to perform our roles in order to make the entire situation work. #resilient naman po tayong mga Pilipino, kaya po natin yan. So let us go to the roles. So given this situation po in our homes, how does the role of the teacher, the student, and the parent change in this situation? So let's proceed po to our next slide. So the question here is, so for those families who chose to have their children enrolled this year, how will our roles and responsibilities change in order to make the most out of this school year? Let's begin our discussion of the roles with the teacher. Okay? So the teacher has three main roles. Hindi lang po ito yung roles nila, but they have three main roles in this school year. The first one is as a manager. So teachers are macro managers of classes. I say macro because each teacher has an average of 5 to 7 classes. Average lang po ito with 40 to 50 students on average then per class. So they have a lot of different things to manage at the same time, and different personalities and situations. So the teacher, as the micromanager, has to think of all these considerations. Secondly, they are now not sages on the stage. Dati po medyo may monopoly yung teacher sa how the class works and the information in the class. But now, teachers are limited to being facilitators only or guides on the side. So their help sometimes will only be given if the students and their parents ask for it, especially po sa mga modular distance learning. And also, yung instruction po ng teachers, although magle-lecture pa rin sila at certain times, they will just be a little bit supplementary to the learning materials provided by our schools and the Department of Education at large. And finally, kung hindi po yun sapat, like there are students who need additional help, the teachers are there to create their own additional learning materials or to curate other learning materials and activities for the students to, improve in their learning. So, how about our students? Let's proceed to our students. So, the students' role also changes. Why? The students now in the distance learning modality has to be more autonomous. Ano pong ibig sabihin nito? They are part of the decision-making process and they need to be more independent than before. Matagal naman na po nating naririnig that the education should be student-centered. But now more than ever, kailangan po ng mga estudyante na maging responsible for their own learning. They need to take more responsibility for their own learning. Ibig sabihin po, proactive dapat sila. Pag meron silang natapos na nila yung module, hindi sila maghihintay na bigyan sila ng panibago. Or pag may question sila, hindi nila hihintayin yung teacher na tanungin sila kung may question ba sila. They need to be the ones to initiate conversations regarding their education. And finally, nakalagay po dyan, they have to be prepared. Not only logistically, like yung mga materials na meron sila, but the education that they will receive this year should be lifelong learning. Hindi lang po yung content. We're not talking about content like grammar or literature or algebra, hindi po yan. But the lifelong skills na magagamit po nila in the long run, kagaya ng organization, time management, priority management, and resource management. So in order for the students to achieve this, kailangan po natin ng help ng ating mga parents. So let us go to the roles of our parents. So the parents or guardians, tatawagin po natin silang guardians because some households, ang head of the household ay lola or maybe tito or tita. So now, the guardians become the micromanagers dahil sila po yung on-site. Sila po yung directly in contact with our clientele, which is our students or who are our students. Because they are physically there and they are the adult present in the room or in the house, they are the ones to micromanage. What does this mean? They will provide immediate guidance and assistance as a support to the teachers. Dahil aware naman po tayo that we as teachers are limited dun sa kaya naming magawa kung kausap namin sila via online platforms, online conferencing platforms, or through call and text. Limited lang po yung kaya naming magawa. So the parents will augment that as a support to the teachers. And finally, they will monitor po. Ako po as a teacher, ang favorite classroom management strategy ko po talaga is proximity control. Yun po yung ibig sabihin, talagang lumalapit po ako sa mga estudyante kapag may kailangan sila, kapag nagiging makulit na sila, lumalapit po ako, talagang lumalakad ako sa aisles ng classroom, tatapikin ang mga bata, bakit hindi ka nagsusulat at ganyan. So ngayon po, mga magulang na po ang gagawa nun para sa amin. Okay, so now that these are the roles of the different stakeholders that we are talking about today, it's important that these three stakeholders maintain an open line of communication. Teachers and students need to communicate their needs to each other. Students and guardians also need to communicate their concerns and needs. And teachers and guardians also need to have an open communication because that's the only way that this can work. Communication is the key dahil hindi po natin maa-address yung ating mga problems and concerns kung hindi po natin sinasabi. So hindi po masusolusyonan kung hindi natin ino-open sa isa't isa kung ano yung mga dapat i-adjust and whatnot. So let's proceed now to the practical tips. So practical tips on creating the schedule. So ito pong sinasabi nating effective LDR. I'm just going to show you a few tips. So let's start with number one. Well, number one there is always be informed. So kailangan po natin ng tamang information in order to make the right decisions. So how are we going to make ourselves informed? Let's go to the next slide. So what are the means or the ways to be informed? Firstly, parents and guardians have to try their best to attend the school orientation. Mahalaga pong malaman natin kung ano po yung mga school policies, kung ano po yung specific learning modality, paano yung sistema ng school pagdating sa pagde-deliver ng materials kung ganun man ang gagawin. Meron ba tayong guidelines in place na sa school lang na yan malalaman? Sino ang teachers ng anak ko? Ano ang mga number nila? Okay? What is my students' schedule? So malalaman lang po natin yan by attending school orientation. So let's try our best to do that. So for example, yung parent po during the school orientation, hindi naman siya makaka-attend dun sa time na binigay ni class advisor or ni school principal. They can always contact the school and find means po to still be informed about the content of the school orientation. Maybe they can give the school a call para maka-receive po sila ng black and white document or those kind, or maybe if you have your students class advisor's number or social media account, pwede niyo po silang i-message and I'm sure that they will be happy to help. Next po, we can, as parents and guardians, you can also read from reliable sources. I'm sure that there are many materials online or even in print na pwede po nating mabasa to help us update ourselves dun sa mga pangangailangan or magiging pangangailangan ng ating mga anak. And I said reliable sources kasi po, syempre kailangan po tama yung ginagawa nating mga desisyon. And if you know someone who are teachers or mga kakilala nyo po na matagal nang nagko-conduct ng homeschooling, let us ask for advice. Let's seek advice from them in order for us to make very informed decisions. Okay, let's proceed to the tip number 2, which is to actually plot the schedule. Ito na nga po ang ating problema. Teacher KJ, ito nga yung topic mo. Paano nga namin gagawin ang pagpa-plot ng schedule? This is going to be a little bit corny, pero kailangan po nating makita ang mga tips na ito. Number 1 po dyan is to sit down with your family members. Para sa mga bata, lalo na sa mga medyo high school, core nito ang magkaroon ng family meeting. Pero mahalaga po na magkaroon kayo ng family meeting regarding your schedules. Bakit po? Ang schedule ng mga magulang, lalo na yung mga nagtatrabaho, for sure, magko-coincide yan dun sa schedule ng mga estudyante natin. So may mga times na hindi tayo magiging available as parents to help during the learning experience. So kailangan po ninyong mag-sit down with the family to plot yung mga schedule ng bawat isa. Like ano ang schedule ni mommy, ano ang schedule ni daddy, anong oras gumigising si lola, kailan dapat natutulog si lola, and all these kinds of things. So kailangan po lahat ng members of the family are involved in the plotting of the schedule para po, number 2, ma-negotiate natin yung terms. Halimbawa, meron pong mga families na dalawa yung estudyante, let's say, or 3, pero ang mobile device nila halimbawa sa bahay ay isa lang. So, kailangan makita nila yung ng family yung schedule ng buong pamilya para makagawa sila ng paraan kung paano siya maa-adjust. Okay. So, or habang wala si mommy nandito lang siya sa gabi kasi nagtatrabaho siya sa umaga, or si daddy sa gabi siya pwede, sa umaga siya nagtatrabaho, or and vice versa. Kailangan po malaman nating lahat yan para po maayos nating mabuti yung pagpa-plot ng ating schedule. Kung sino yung adult na pwedeng maiwan, or kung wala, sino yung pinakamatandang member ng family na pwedeng mag-take charge. And then, finally, as you are plotting your schedules, you should also allow time for rest. Ito po talagang sinistress ko, especially nitong mga nakaraang araw. Dapat po, as individual members of the family and as a family as a whole, meron po kayong time for rest. Kung baga, meron po kayong operating hours and you allow your time to have breaks in between as well. Ito po ay napakahalaga para po sa ating health, overall health. Okay, physical health, mental health, no? Mahalaga po yan. And productivity also. Kumbaga, kailangan po natin ng time to gather enough energy to complete our daily tasks. Hindi lang po ito totoo para sa mga students, kundi para rin po sa mga magulang. So for example, ang school hours ng isang bata ay 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. Okay? Dapat they are allowed time to also play a little bit lang, or sa mga parents naman po, dapat ganitong oras mga anak, wala munang masyadong manggugulo kay mami kasi matutulog ako, or these kinds of things. So all of these considerations should be part of plotting our schedules. Now, let's proceed to tip number 3, which is to implement a routine. So mahalaga po para sa ating mga magulang or tagapag-alaga, guardians, ang mag-implement ng isang working routine as early as now. So what are the sub-tips for implementing the routine? So para po sa mga public schools, again, October 5 pa po mag-start yung ating school year. But the first tip that we have here is to start as early as now. Kahit po hindi pa nagsa-start ang school year, kailangan po medyo simulan na natin na yung mga anak natin gumigising at a certain time, okay? At sundin na po natin yung schedule na yun para mabuo na po yun sa kanilang sistema, no, habits. Sabi nga po nila, it takes 21 days to form a habit. So we have more than 21 days before October 5 para po ma-form yung habit ng mga bata at yung mindset din po nila that they are about to start the school. And then, number 2 here is to enforce the routine, but of course, with compassion pa din. So, syempre, mahalaga po na disiplinahin natin yung mga bata. Pero kapag nakikita po natin na nahihirapan sila, of course, I know, as parents, mangingibabaw pa rin po yung ating love and concern sa kanila. So, mag-allow din po tayo ng room for mistakes and adjustments para sa kanila. And habang ini-implement po natin yung mga routine na yan, halimbawa po, yung buong family, tapos na-notice natin na meron po tayong mga bagay na na-miss out during our initial meeting, i-adjust po natin yan. So, kumbaga, meron pa po tayong trial period habang hindi pa talaga nagsisimula ang school year. So, adjust where you need to adjust para po sa benefit hindi lang ng students but all the members of the household. Okay, let's proceed to tip number 4, which is to keep open communication. So sinabi ko na po ito kanina, the communication between the teachers and the students and the parents and the teachers. But how do we specifically keep communication open? So let's look at our sub-tips. So the first one, of course, is to communicate your concerns to all the members of the household. For example, meron mga arrangements na hindi comfortable for you, you have to make sure that you have an open line of communication so that everyone is comfortable to voice out their concerns. Halimbawa po yung bata, baka natatakot siya kay ate or kay mama masyado, tapos tatanggapin niya na lang kahit na nahihirapan siya. So we have to encourage everyone to communicate their concerns openly. And then we have here, be open to changes. For sure po, after communicating all the family members' concerns, magbabago at magbabago po talaga yan. So there's nothing permanent in this world except change. So very cliche, but totoo po talaga yan. So somewhere along the way, talagang magkakaroon po ng mga pagbabago yan because people change and even our plans change as well. So kailangan pong maging open tayo sa ating mga changes. And finally, i-monitor po natin yung progress not only of the students but all the members of the household. Ano pong ibig sabihin ng monitoring ng progress nila? As the days go by, kailangan po nating tingnan, okay pa ba si bunso sa ganitong arrangement? Okay? Nakakatulog ba ng maayos si daddy sa ganitong arrangement? Ang mental health ng family, okay pa ba tayo? Okay, and these kinds of things. So we always have to reflect as a family and as individuals kung okay po ba yung system na ini-implement natin sa ating mga tahanan. So all these things have to always be done in an environment po that will help each other. Okay, and finally, mabilis lang pala ang ating discussion. Ang number 5 is to be intentional. So ito po yung medyo emotional side of the tips na ipine-present ko po sa inyo ngayon. So what do we mean by being intentional? So let's look at our sub-points. Number 1 po sa being intentional is to know your goals as a family. Yung kasama na po dyan yung mga bagay na pinapahalagahan natin bilang isang pamilya. Okay? So, ano po ba yung gusto nating ma-achieve this school year? Gusto niyo po, kasama po ba sa goals ninyo na sobrang mataas yung grade ng mga anak ninyo? Or it's enough for you na nakakaagapay sila at natututunan nila yung mga lessons? Is it your goal as a family to be much closer to each other in this time? Habang nag-aaral kayo, ang mga bata, okay? So, alamin po natin yung goals ng individual members of the family and ng entire family para kasama din po yun sa ating decision-making process. Next po is to try your best to always make yourself available. What does this mean? I'm sure po, syempre, may mga parents na nagtatrabaho. Hindi naman po sila laging nasa bahay. Gabi lang sila nandyan or umaga lang sila nandyan or saglit lang sila nandyan. But try your best to make yourself available to help the members of your family. So for example, parang mag-create po kayo ng image in your family kung saan malalapitan ko si mama or si papa kapag may kailangan ako. So but my mom is just a call away or a text away. Kung sakaling nalilito na ako, yung mga ganyang bagay. So always try to make yourself available. But if you are not available, also communicate nyo rin sa ibang member, baka pwede mo namang tulungan yung kapatid mo, etc. So, try to make yourself available. And finally, of course, you have to create a supportive space. So, ito po yung sinasabi ko kanina na kailangan open tayo sa lahat ng bagay, okay, kapag nagsabi ng problema, instead of judging, okay, kailangan ang initial response natin is support and affirmation. So mahalaga po yan in this time when people are very vulnerable to anxiety at pagpapanik dahil po sa uncertainty na nangyayari sa ating mga kapaligiran. So create a supportive space na meron po kayong mutual understanding that you are each other's teammates, magkakagrupo po tayo. So, itong entire school year na to is a group work between and among the members of the family and the ones that are in the educational institutions. So, let us quickly go back to the 5 tips that I presented to you. Excuse me. Okay, the first tip is to always be informed. So, alam na po natin na ang mga tips po na kasama dyan ay umattend tayo ng orientation and to get reliable information from sources and of course professionals. The second one po is to plot the schedules as a family, okay? Para po meron tayong working system within our households, and then to negotiate and allow time for each other's rest and recuperation and enjoyment as well. Our third tip is implementing the routine as early as you can. And while implementing, be open to the possible changes and adjust according to the concerns of everyone. The fourth one here is to keep your communication lines open between and among the members of the family so that you will be able to address concerns immediately. And finally, you have to be intentional in order to create an environment in the house that is conducive to learning and also to the achievement of the family and individual members' goals. So those are the 5 tips po that I can share with you. Alam ko po, very basic yan at maybe yung iba po sa inyo sasabihin nyo na alam ko na yan, Teacher KJ, but it always pays to go back to the basics kasi survival po natin yan, survival guide po natin yan in navigating through this pandemic. So let's see po, let's just quickly check kung na-hit po ba natin yung ating mga goals. We are able to answer naman po what is the current situation in the Philippines relative to education, BC and DC, okay? We are also able to go over the different roles of the stakeholders that we discussed, who are the students, the teachers, and the parents or guardians. And we are able to go over some practical tips on how we can effectively create a schedule not only for the learner but for all the members of the household. So, ayan po, dahil nasagot na po natin yan, I hope that at this point ay makakagawa na po kayo ng isang effective #LDR or Learner's Daily Routine that will work for you and your child this coming school year. So at this point po, let's just remember that with the students at the center of education, I hope that this talk also helped to put an emphasis on the importance of the partnership between parents and guardians and the teachers in making sure that the students will achieve their greatest potentials that this pandemic allows for everyone. And also, I hope that this will encourage parents and guardians to have an increased involvement. I know involved naman na yung mga parents and guardians natin, but to exert more effort and have an increased involvement in the education of our nation's future. So kailangan po nating mas higit na makialam dun sa edukasyon ng pag-asa at kinabukasan ng ating bayan. So lagi kapag nagtotalk po ako, lagi ko pong sinasabi, para sa bata, para sa bayan, at para sa Diyos. So at this point, I am open to questions from our viewers. Marami pa po tayong oras. So the moderators can help me with the questions po.
Thank you po, Teacher KJ. Our first question po is from Sir Dennis, ma'am. Good morning po. Ano po ang magiging advice niyo po sa mga parents sa paggawa ng routine ng mga anak ay nasa elementary level pa po?
Okay. So, first of all, I'd like to say po na ako po ay in the high school level. So, I'm sure po na students in the elementary level have even more energy. Mas mataas pa po yung energy nila dun sa mga students na hawak ko. And I have friends who are also parents of children who are in elementary. And ang tendency po kasi sa level na yan ay sobrang maikli po yung attention span nila and they need to have a lot of space po to move and to rest din. So my advice para po sa mga parents ng mga elementary students is to number one, to try and like place breaks in between learning activities so that they are able to stand up, to stretch. Okay, alam ko naman po yung mga teachers, gagawa na po din sila ng paraan dyan during their classes or activities na ipapagawa nila through the modules. But as parents po, medyo gumawa po tayo ng effort para patayuin po sila. And also, sinasabi ko rin po ito palagi na ako po kasi as a teacher, I try to level up the learning experience by making what do you call this? Parang point system sa mga bata. So halimbawa, bigyan niyo po sila ng incentive. Like halimbawa, pag nagawa mo itong activity mo sa school within this time, bibigyan kita ng reward na ganito. So yung incentive system po, mahalaga din po yan sa pag-create ng schedule. So just always stick to the routine para maintindihan po ng mga bata how important the schedule is. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you
Next
po, TJ. Our next question po is from Miss Agnes Redula Rosal. How can we attain a good communication to those parents or guardians who don't even bother to attend meetings and unavailable if visited at home?
Ayan. So, alam niyo po, Ma'am Agnes, nakaka-relate po ako sa inyo because not all parents po talaga have the same enthusiasm, no? And involvement nga po sa education ng kanilang estudyante. So, at that point po, tayo po as teachers, all we can do is to try our best to reach out. But if they don't reach out po, they don't reach out back to us, it's really going to be a problem. So if that's the case po, you have to communicate with the students themselves. I'm sure kayo na po yung mag-guide sa kanila. I know it's an extra effort po and ganun po talaga eh. Kapag hindi po talaga magiging perfecto yung sistema na meron tayong lahat. But as teachers, ganun po talaga, it's part of our job to go the extra mile and reach out sa students na po natin. And kapag hindi po involve ang parents nila, as second parents, tayo na po talaga yung gagawa ng extra effort. Next po.
Thank you, ma'am.
I hope that answered Ma'am Agnes.
Thank you po. And next question po is from Miss Regina Modesto. How about if both parents were OFW, only grandma taking care of the child?
Okay, so medyo mahirap po yan kasi malaki yung generational gap, no? So, at this point po talagang mahalaga for the grandparent to have an open communication sa ating pong teachers para malaman po niya exactly how she can guide or assist yung bata sa bahay. I know it's difficult na po at their age to learn technology, halimbawa, or to assist especially po in terms of content. So like what I said, babalik at babalik po ako dun sa tip na i-communicate lang po natin yung concern. So halimbawa po, as parents na OFW, meron din po kayong contact with the teacher or the advisor of your child, i-communicate nyo po na, ma'am, ang adult lang po sa house is yung grandmother, pwede nyo po ba siyang i-assist? And I'm sure po the teachers will also find a way para po ma-address yung ating concern na yan. So, open communication is the key to success. Meron pa po ba?
Next
Marami
question
po tayong
po.
time.
Yes, for Miss
Yes.
Judeline Guinabo. Hello po. With this, we promote constant communication with each other. How can we encourage social distancing, especially within household?
Ayan. Ang social distancing po sa household, medyo mahirap po i-enforce, especially that there are families nga po who share the same bed because they don't have the luxury of having a big space. So yung social distancing po sa bahay, talagang mahirap po yan i-implement. They share the same dining table, di ba? They share the same bathroom, halimbawa. So it's a little bit difficult po para sabihin na, huwag kayong magdikit-dikit dyan sa bahay kasi hindi naman natin alam kung gaano kalaki lang yung space na meron sila sa bahay. So all we can do is teach po our students and their parents to do the protocols po to make sure na kapag they enter the house, safe po sila for the family. So halimbawa, kung galing sa labas ang isa sa kanila na ugaliin na magpalit agad ng damit, maghugas ng kamay, mag-disinfect ng mga dinala sa loob. So yun lang po yung kaya nating i-advise para sa kanila. Any other questions?
Next po is from Miss Ai Vanda. How can we, teachers, help a solo breadwinner parent for their students on this LDR?
Ayan. So, mahirap po talaga kapag meron tayong mga solo parents, no, na kailangan na sila lang yung nag-work para sa mga estudyante. So, ayun nga po. So, as teachers, it's our responsibility to know the profile po ng lahat ng bawat isang estudyante natin. So, kailangan alam natin yung specific concerns nila, the specific arrangements that we can make. Ganon din po sa kanilang mga parents. So, kailangan po nating tanungin yung parents kung paano natin sila pwedeng matulungan. Or hanggang saan lang yung kaya nilang maitulong or maikontribute sa atin para po makagawa po tayo ng way na beneficial po sa lahat ng tao na involved in the situation.
Next question mo from Teresa Arnaiz. What if po, ma'am, if parents are working and only the yaya is with them? How can we monitor the routine or schedule that we made for our child?
Ayan. So, ayun po. So, kung meron po kayong yaya, si yaya po ay dapat kasama sa ating regular family meeting. So, kasama po sila sa uupo sa ating family meeting regarding the schedule. And kung kaya naman po ng parent within the day to communicate with the yaya, to check up din kung, yaya, kamusta na ba si Junior, ginagawa niya ba yung kailangan niyang gawin? So, kayun nga po babalik po talaga tayo sa open communication. So, siguro gagawan po natin si yaya ng guide. So, kung susulat po natin yung schedule sa bahay. Meron po tayong calendar na nakikita ng lahat ng members of the family. And then at the end of the day po, pag umuwi tayo, let's make it a habit po to check up on the student and also the yaya. Yaya, nahirapan ka ba today? Ano yung mga naging concerns mo, etc. So, yayas are also part of the household. They're almost like our family. So, kailangan kasama rin po sila sa entire process. Other questions po?
Next question po, ma'am, is from Miss Aurora Torres Annie. There are instances that parents are both working and no one can assist the child. How can we help these parents to give attention for the needs of the learners?
Okay. So, of course, it cannot be helped that parents need to work for a living. Siyempre, kailangan po talaga nila yung gawin. So, um, as much as possible po, the parents should keep an open communication, not with just one teacher, but all the teachers of their parents, of their children, I mean, para po ma-monitor nila yung progress ng bata in all the subject areas. So let's say may schedule na po sila, alam nila kung sino yung teacher, they can communicate with the teacher na, ma'am, kamusta po si yung anak ko, nagawa po ba niya, ano pa po yung kailangan niya. So when we are absent in the home during the learning experience of the children, I'm sure that we can find a way for someone to help us with it. So siguro concern po ito, especially kapag sa modular distance learning, kasi hindi naman po face-to-face na nagkikita yung teacher at saka yung student. So ibigay lang po natin din sa mga bata yung mga numbers ng mga teachers nila para po they can call for help when they need help. Okay.
Okay, that's all the questions that we have for now po.
Okay.
May we ask you po, Teacher KJ, if you have any last reminders to our viewers today?
Okay, so this pandemic po is really a challenge for everyone. So paulit-ulit ko pong isi-stress yung importance ng communication po natin sa isa't isa. So if things are beginning to get difficult, don't hesitate to ask for help from friends, from family, from everyone. So I hope that the tips that I presented to you today will be helpful po in your preparations for the new normal in education. And if ever you have further questions or nahiya lang po kayong ipabasa online, you can always contact me through the information po na finlash natin kanina. So I have the KJ Teacher on Facebook and on YouTube. And if you want to email me your questions, nandun din po yun. So you can, all the information you can find po on my Facebook page. So I hope that this was helpful to you. I'm really thankful na I am able to contribute with my little knowledge po in your preparations. And may we all stay safe, healthy, and blessed. Maraming salamat.
There we have it. In behalf of Ibal Group Incorporated, I would like to thank you, Teacher KJ, for being our speaker for this morning, for giving us an insightful learning session. It is an honor to have you with us today. And to all our Kabibal viewers, all thanks to you for your continuous patronage to our daily learning session. We'll see you for our YouTube live this afternoon. Muli, maraming salamat at magandang araw sa ating lahat. Goodbye po!
Thank you very much, everyone.